In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
Thank you, deep-voiced person with a funky backbeat. Indeed, this is not a council hearing, this is hearing the council. You can't have a government without a council, so you can't have a government radio station without a council show. This is it. We're coming to you from the Train Track Enclosed Nerve Center that's the headquarters of the Office of Cable TV, Film, Music, and Entertainment. It's also the historic headquarters of Black Entertainment Television, so it's an honor to be here. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to celebrate this thing called the Council. I'm Josh Gibson, Director of Communications for the Council. You may also know me as the Council's voice on social media, at Council of DC. Here at the Council, our communications goal is to engage with residents in an informative, conversational, and sometimes even enjoyable way. You know, if you follow us on Twitter, we're believers in the Mary Poppins School of Communications. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. We want to make it easy for average residents to understand what the Council does. We're demystifying our work and the people who do it. Remember, the DC Council's just like your workplace, except with the dais. On the show, we'll try to keep things light, offbeat, informal, and interesting. You'll learn about policy, learn about people, learn about history, and learn about the institution. Listeners, we've now begun our 5th round of interviews with council members. The older interviews are available, as always, on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. However, our more recent interviews are now available on iHeartMusic, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, or on the DC Radio app. And stay tuned, we're going to be adding videos as well. The earlier interviews focus mainly on getting to know the council members' backgrounds, successes, struggles, and the people who shape and surround them. In the 5th round, we continue to broaden things out, tackling issues that interest the council members and me. And so, as always, without any further ado, let me introduce our guest, Ward 3 Council Member Mary Cheh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to the tiny handful of critics of this show who are out there who consider it a giant waste, this is the one episode when you're going to be right, because our topic today is trash, waste, recycling.
We're going to talk trash?
We're going to talk trash. I'm going to talk trash with one of my bosses and get away with it. Even better. So I would say one of your cornerstone achievements from your time on the council has been fighting trash and encouraging recycling, smart energy use. Talk a little bit first about what brought you to that point. What in your youth, in your education, has made you focus with laser vision on this topic?
Well, I don't know that it goes back to my youth, whether I was, diving in dumpsters or what, but that wasn't the case. What happened was I've always had an interest in the environment and protecting us in all ways. And then on the council, I chair the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, so I've had a real direct way of moving legislation and hopefully making change that's positive. And there are different pieces of it. It's not just obviously waste. Last year, I spent almost the entire year refining and getting consensus on an energy bill. And I think now that has passed at the end of the last calendar year, we have gotten the most progressive energy bill probably in the nation that deals with climate change and various aspects of it. And I want to say something about that relative to the bill that I'm working on now, dealing with waste. That bill, even though it emanates from the District of Columbia, and we're a small jurisdiction, the fact of the matter is we have to do the right thing. We have to do the right and moral thing with respect to climate change. But beyond that, even though we're a small jurisdiction, we have in the past with a number of our bills been able to be a model for other jurisdictions. And so that's, an advantage as well. And then, it's part of this sort of grouping of different jurisdictions following the default of the federal government, which under the current president has really made a U-turn on environmental protection and health and safety. And really the way to pick up that slack, the only way in this period for however long this administration stays in office, is for local governments, state governments and local governments, to sort of join hands loosely to fill in the gaps. And so that's what we've been trying to do. And this year, my effort is going to be the matter of waste. And just to give you some dimensions of the problem, each one of us, on average, produces 4.5 pounds of waste every day. And the United States is the biggest waste producer in the world. We have to do something with it. Now, what we have is a consumer-oriented society where instead of, thinking about how we're going to reduce what we're doing, we're actually producing more waste every day. It's growing every day. And so the motto must be take waste, and make and waste. And most of us, I think, have some appreciation of the dimensions of the problem. It's not only pollution of the air, pollution of the water. It's not just that, but it also contributes to climate change. Because landfills produce methane, and methane is 25 times more potent than carbon in the atmosphere. And so it makes up a substantial portion of that problem too. So what are we going to do about this, or what should we be doing about this? Most people, I think, want to do the right thing. They try to recycle, they try to, separate their trash and what have you. And I know, for example, people that I deal with, they're really trying to get on board with composting and that sort of thing. But it's hard. It's hard because the target is always moving, even on recycling. Many people don't know what can be recycled and what can't be recycled. One of the major issues that we face is contamination of recycling. And so if it's contaminated, then even though it started out as recycling, when it was picked up, it's going to be thrown into the trash. But we can't always fault the residents or the business or whatever, because it can be difficult. And so I have a little task for you.
Okay.
I have props here, and I have items. The first thing I have is this box, which included a plastic container that some person's lunch was in before they ate. I did clean it.
Okay.
And then this covering that goes over it when you microwave it.
Right,
and
it's a cellophane film.
Yes, it was all shipped in this box, okay?
Right.
And then the person with that lunch might have had perhaps a yogurt, and they might have had something from Starbucks. And the Starbucks includes, among other things, the cup, the lid, the sleeve, which to keep it from burning your hand as you carry it, and this little heat preserver that you stick in that little hole. And then to eat the lunch, we have plastic spoon and a plastic fork, and covering the yogurt was this sort of aluminum foil type cover. And so I would ask you, and can your viewers see this? Do they? No.
They some of them will be.
Okay.
We're experimenting with YouTube.
Okay, so we want to consider, and I'm going to ask you, because you want to do the right thing, I want to do the right thing. Which of these items are recyclable, and which have to be put into the trash? So,
What
do you say?
My sort of gut take, and I'm kind of passionate about this stuff too. You might not realize that, but I'm fairly enthusiastic.
Yes, okay.
But I
Yes,
potentially
yes.
will be wrong here. I think there's no food contamination on the Lean Cuisine cardboard box, so I would put that with paper recycling. I would think that the tray from the Lean Cuisine and the dish from the yogurt, if rinsed, are recyclable. The sleeve from the coffee cup, I would think, is paper recyclable. The coffee lid is one I've always kind of struggled with. And I would think that the cellophane top of the Lean Cuisine, the plastic utensils, the little coffee stick to put in the hole so it doesn't leak, and the coffee cup itself and the foil lid of the Chobani yogurt are not recyclable.
Okay. Pretty good. You did pretty well. But you know what?
It's a talk show and a game show,
yes,
people.
a talk show and a game show.
What do we have for the winner? Assuming I won.
You get to keep all of these props.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly, the box for the Lean Cuisine food item is only recently recyclable, okay?
Right.
And not long ago, it would have been an error to put it into the recycle bin, which illustrates my point.
Because back then it was only if it was office paper.
Right, and so, and no, even after that, and this cup from Starbucks used to not be recyclable either, but now they've changed the composition some, so it is recyclable. So now it is. And the Lean Cuisine plastic tray, and you're right, if you wash it, it's recyclable. Otherwise, some of these things have a lot of oils in them, and it sort of mucks up the work.
Right, and how much water are you wasting to save
I
the
know.
environment by recycling
right,
the plastic?
And this paper could be recyclable. This lid is not, or was not, but it is now.
Okay.
These items are not, no. And this item, until I looked it up myself, I had routinely been putting this in recycle because I thought it was plastic and should be able to be recycled.
This is the tiny green stick you put in the top of
keep
a
it hot.
coffee
Now,
to keep it from leaking and
we
hot.
could have brought other things, I suppose, but the point of all this is that a lot of people don't know, or they don't know with any complete confidence. And the usual rule of thumb is, when in doubt, throw it out, because you don't want to contaminate the actual recycling.
And that goes against human nature, because you want to do the right thing for nature, and you tend to want to break a tie by putting it in recycling. Mm-hmm. But your point very clearly is no.
The contamination rate in the district is close to 20%. So that's pretty high, I think.
And that's just the people.
Yeah.
No, the trash. We're talking about the trash.
Anyway, it could be residue left on recycled, possibly recycled materials. And one thing that's a prominent mistake are plastic bags. So I'm going to use this occasion to talk to your listeners.
Okay.
The plastic bags that your newspaper comes in, not recyclable. And if you're using a plastic bag in your kitchen to separate recycling from trash, and you take out the recycling in that plastic bag, you have to dump the contents. The plastic bag is not recyclable, okay? That's a major contaminant. But we have a lot to do just in terms of education. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that I've done in the past and what I'm doing now in terms of some of these issues about recycling. Now, in the past, we had from 2013, a zero waste diversion goal of 80% by 2032. We're not there. Residential diversion is 23%. The national average is 34%, and we're certainly behind places like San Francisco and even Montgomery County. I passed a statute, Sustainable Solid Waste Management Amendment Act of 2014. It required, source separation. It asked the district to develop a goal, which we have now for our zero waste, but it also implemented other things. It made it banned styrofoam. And so disposable food serviceware can't be made out of styrofoam anymore. As you may know, our straws can't be made out of plastic anymore. I assume you know that and you've seen that around. We have two producer responsibility aspects to our waste, namely paint, so that if you don't use all your paint, you can take it back to the paint store, and the manufacturer is supposed to take that back. That's been very successful according to the Department of the Environment. We also have an electronics recycling where we bring that back to the stores, and they have the producer takes that back and presumably uses what can still be used. We've established through that earlier statute a composting program. It's not curbside composting, which is what we want to get to. Food waste contributes mightily to the waste stream. I passed something called the Save Good Food Act. We have these expiration dates on things and we just toss them. A lot of that doesn't have to happen because they're perfectly good. And then, we have a sustainable purchasing program for the district. So they should purchase from a list of green products and things that we can reuse and then not add to the waste stream. Okay, so what are we doing now? Well, we're going to enhance what we've already done.
I have a couple quick follow-up questions, and these are fairly detailed as an avid recycler.
Okay.
One is with the paint and the electronics. Do you need to show a proof of purchase? Do you need to have bought something at the electronics store to give them your electronics to recycle, or are they just required to serve as a depot?
I don't know the answer to that. And you see, there are all these things that we would have to figure out. I don't know. I don't know.
That's because the other question I was going to ask.
I don't think so, but I can't say for sure.
The question comes. I live in a co-op. And recycling is different when you're in a co-op because each person might have one item of electronics recycling every couple of years, but we as a building generate a lot. But then for a while we recycled styrofoam, and the building's worth of styrofoam once or twice a year we would take to a place and they'd recycle it. But the place was in Baltimore and it closed. Another issue is that you can't put the recycling in a bag in the recycling. I'm on the 4th floor. So the question is, how do you get it down the stairs if it's not in a bag, or what do you do with the bag once you?
Well, do you put it in a chute?
No. It's a smaller apartment building, so you walk it down the 4 flights of stairs, and we ended up solving it when they started making.
How did you solve it?
We now have a small trash can just for torn open plastic bags.
Excellent.
So we can honor, but it's just interesting because I think a lot of times when bills are passed, it's with a homeowner in mind. When a ton of people in D.C. live in apartments.
The private haulers who pick up trash from buildings, one of the things that the new legislation would do, among other things, I want to have this program, such as they have in Montgomery County, whereby the manager or whoever's in charge of things at the building, they have to make a plan for how they're going to deal with trash and recycling and so on, sign off on it, and then be responsible for it. And that kind of an approach in Montgomery County has really produced good results. And then also a little bit more, auditing from time to time of the haulers when they bring stuff to the district to see how contaminated it is. And to perhaps, even sometimes the district might look in big garbage bins and see things. We're now doing this program. It is for residences, but it can also be, for other kinds of buildings as well. We have oops stickers. And you're not citing anybody for anything, but you're putting a little sticker on there. Oops, this shouldn't have been here. Because again, like with these props that I have, sometimes it's not that the person is misbehaving, it's that they earnestly tried to do the right thing, but it wasn't correct. And so education needs to be done too. And I've been thinking about, particularly with requiring greater separation of the largest entities like hospitals and universities and that sort of thing, to having a program with DPW where they actually go into these institutions, we're going to start with the largest ones, and actually on the ground show folks how they can do it and what should be included and what should not be included. Because again, people need to know. And also, I want to work with with our building code so that when new buildings are being built, how most people have perhaps in a kitchen 2 spots, one for trash, one for recycling. Well, now we're going to need one for composting. Right. So that we have all 3 covered. And then we're working toward having curbside composting. I put a lot of money in the budget for composting and for finding a site in the District of Columbia. My most recent conversation with the head of DPW is saying that they can't find a site in the district. So the next best thing is to try to find property outside of the district where we could do composting. And then we need to get a 3rd stream to pick up the composting and to take it away. If we had that, we could materially increase the composting that goes on in the district. It would be just like when you put out your garbage can and your recycle can, you would put out your composting, and that would also be picked up. So, and we're increasing the limitations on what you can get from takeout. Let's say you went to Starbucks, and just today I had an oatmeal from Starbucks. And without saying anything to them, they will put in that oatmeal, they'll put in the plastic spoon, which is wrapped in plastic. They'll put in 3 different kinds of things that I could add to the oatmeal, and perhaps something else too, I don't know. I might not, and throw in a napkin, which I may or may not need. And they're going to put all that stuff in there. Oh, and little packets of sugar. They're going to put in regular sugar, they're going to put in raw sugar, and they're going to, I don't put sugar in it. So what we want to do is say, with respect to a whole variety of things that you would naturally get when you do takeout, that you have to ask for it.
Right.
And unless you ask for it, because otherwise what happens is I take out what I want and I throw out the rest.
Right.
And speaking of that, by the way, I have been in doctors' offices where things that they're purchasing, or even, for example, in hospitals, and I'm not talking about putting anybody at risk, but when they need an item, it'll come packaged with related or supplementary items. I have seen medical personnel open the package, take out what they need, and toss the rest of it. That's the kind of behavior that we have to stop, and we have to be really intentional about it because, for example, China has now announced that it's not going to take single-use plastic anymore. That's a place where we send a lot of our plastic. But China, in addition to ramping up to, tamping down the use of plastic, is also going to begin a whole process of developing reusable materials, not plastic. So their effort goes from both not increasing the amount of plastic that they're taking in their country, but also to reduce the amount of plastic that they are producing. What we need is something even at the producer level to limit the amount of plastic that's being put out there. Part of the problem is a lot of plastic is made from,
fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels, and with the current administration lifting the lid on fossil fuels and productions and that sort of thing, it's only encouraging more plastic and more thought to giving, well, how much can we use plastic? In what ways can we use plastic? We're working against ourselves in so many ways. But what I find, from people who talk to me about these things, they want to know earnestly, just like you, what can I do about this? And so there is a website, DPW has a website, which can tell you, about recycling. We have a program where you can get, if you take a little bit of a course, which is free, about composting, they'll give you $75 toward a proper bin if you want to do it that way. There are things that you can do, and it might seem minor, just you and me and everything, but it's cumulative, and it all adds up. And so what I'm trying to do at the council is I'm trying to put in place legislation that will enable us to do better, but also provide assistance to people so they can do better, because ultimately it's going to come down to the retail level. And it's vitally important because our environment is overcome with waste.
Now, here's one idea I'm throwing in of environmental legislation that I haven't heard anyone in the country do. Ultimately, people say recycling takes energy, and you're better off with reuse, like you're saying, reusable plastics. Why are there no tax credits for secondhand stores? Vintage clothing,
that's
antique furniture? Because, instead of someone buying a cheap dresser made out of particle board that was made with deadly chemicals, if they bought a beautiful old wooden dresser from 70 years ago,
one thing
better.
You're talking about tax benefits, but one thing in this new legislation, this omnibus legislation, is to create a platform, an electronic platform for people to put up stuff for reuse. And it's not like eBay, for sale necessarily, but it could be. But I have to communicate to you that I have this dresser, or I have to communicate to you clothing, for example, that can be reused. It's to again try to facilitate your ability to get out there with goods that you don't want, but they're perfectly fine, and somebody else could use them.
Yeah,
so there's that. But a tax incentive might be an idea as well.
For a store.
Yeah,
because also,
right.
Everyone's wearing the same shirt because everyone shops at the same stores, but vintage clothes are unique and are one of a kind. And
there are many such stores. My daughters, when they were growing up, they're grown up and out of the house now, but they didn't want to go to what should I say, a regular store. They wanted to go to vintage stores and get vintage clothes. I said, but those clothes, why, you look ridiculous. But anyway, that's what they wanted, and so that's what they did.
Now, let me ask you, and these are not questions from me, but I feel like I have to throw in at least a little devil's advocate.
Okay.
Bills like these get criticized kind of from two sides. Republicans, particularly the straw legislation, has become a bone of criticism on one end of the political spectrum, saying, don't you have other things to worry about? And then other folks say, don't you have other things to worry about? In a city with crime problems, an education system that's struggling.
It doesn't replace our concern for other issues. It doesn't supplant that. It's not. That's not the way this works. It means that we're doing this, and what is that thing? We can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's a false argument, okay? And what would you have us do? Be completely indifferent and not tend to these serious environmental problems? That's part of the thing about dealing with it at the government level, because market forces may not and are not likely to deal with these issues, because you have companies that want to make money, they want to be efficient. They want to use whatever they use and not be responsible. It's like the tragedy of the commons, where nobody's completely responsible. They throw it out there. It's in the market. People buy things, and it's producing bad results. So it's just like when let's say you're a runner and you run and you're breathing in bad air. You individually may not be able to regulate the matters related to the environment. That's where government has to step in and provide regulation and provide guidance, and it does not take away from other problems. And if people say this is not serious, well, maybe because they're holding one little straw. But if you think about all the straws and all the plastic and all the waste and all the consequences of all that waste, it's a big problem. And here's another thing I would tell these folks. You think that we shouldn't focus on this, but I'll tell you now, the people who are children now, if we do nothing about these issues, about climate change and about air pollution and about all of these environmental problems, and it gets worse and worse and worse, they appropriately should turn back and look at us and say, why didn't you do something about that? You were in a position to do something about that, and you let the planet suffer this way, and all of the people and the animals and all of everything that we hold dear as an environment, you didn't do anything to protect it.
Right. The day that the issues you're talking about become front of mind, like crime or education may be, it'll be too late. I mean, the days when we can't, like in China, where there's days you can't go outside. It's dangerous to walk 2 blocks. If we don't deal with the issues now, they will someday be front of mind, and then it'll be too late.
And we know that if we do get in front of it, we can have material change. Think about when they took lead out of gasoline, the effect that had, how important that was. Think about some of the other kinds of chemicals that have been unleashed on the population, and we haven't gotten anywhere near that sort of regulation. For example, a full and complete accounting of pesticides and what they do to us. The time is now, the problem is serious, and we have to act.
Absolutely. Speaking of the time is now, sadly, we're almost out of the aforementioned time. We do our one fun question at the end.
Okay.
In this round, I am trying to build the perfect council member out of parts of present and past council members. And I would like you to just throw out 2 or 3 of, I would love this person's this person's courage, this person's smarts, this person's dedication. Do any of those leap to mind for any of your colleagues or any of your predecessors? If you could build a perfect council member.
Well, I'll tell you one.
It would be 95% you, I'm sure, but the other 5%.
No, but one actually does leap to mind, and he's no longer on the council. I was always extraordinarily impressed with the intelligence of David Catania. He was really sharp, really knew his committee, knew his subjects, and I was always, I wouldn't say necessarily in awe, but something close to that when I saw him perform and what he knew and his preparation and native intelligence. So I would say the intelligence of David Catania.
All right. Well, sadly, we ran out of time. Thank you so much again
You're
for
welcome.
taking the time, Councilmember.
Thank you
so
for
grateful.
doing this. This is great.
No, really appreciate it. And thank you again, listeners. Tune in again next time. We're at DC Radio at 96.3 on your HD4 dial or at dcradio.gov. I'm Josh Gibson. This is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council. Thank you.
In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and dcradio.gov.